And we are back with another episode of Before You Buy, the show where we give you some straight up gameplay and some first impressions. I'm of course Falcon. I really wanted to play this. It's the Spyro Reignited Trilogy, and let me go ahead and say, just up front, it's extremely good if you like collectathons. And that word bears some sort of stigma, I'll say, but here's the thing. There's collectathons done good, and there's collectathons done bad. I'm not going to categorize them for you, because it's honestly a matter of taste, and there's definitely going to be people who like collectathons that I don't like, and there may be different reasons that people like them. However, the Spyro type collectathon where everything is really not overblown, where there's a clear path, there's a clear sense of direction, the game is constantly giving you nice big doses of personality. As far as I'm concerned, that aspect of the game is not a negative. That being said, there is one massive improvement in that you can actually control the camera. A lot of people may not remember this, but you couldn't do that. You could press L1 or R1 and it would center the camera behind you, but that's not controlling the camera. And it's kind of jarring when you consider its competition, the Nintendo 64 collectathons. On the Nintendo 64, they had the ability to do kind of camera movements using the C buttons in a lot of the collectathon games, particularly Mario World, but the PlayStation did not have as many buttons. And things like dual stick movement were not a thing yet. I mean, you can even go forward as far as Resident Evil 4, and there wasn't a standardized way to move around the camera. But that's something that has been remedied. The new Spyro uses the Unreal Engine, and it uses it to good effect because it's a pretty game. Now, I wouldn't say that the original Spyro necessarily held up over the years, but if you go back and look at it, it doesn't look terrible. The animation's not so great, and it's super weird that you can't control the camera, and any footage of the game even looks super weird because you're thinking, why aren't they moving the camera? Why aren't they moving the camera? And that is honestly kind of a pet peeve for me going back to the old games, but now you don't really need to. Comparing it to the Crash Bandicoot remaster. Crash, they kind of had to invent a new art style for Crash Bandicoot to exist nowadays, whereas Spyro looks a little bit more like a contemporary 3D CGI animated children's film, which is great because it really works. And all of the characters just have this lovingly crafted detail, lots of style, they're expressive, the voice actors are enjoyable, even though sometimes the things they say feel a little bit jarring because they're very specific instructions that involve things that are on the controller, and you have these well done performances of people saying like, press the action button. We have a little bit less of the press the action button nowadays. For me, what makes Spyro worth playing, and this goes for the originals as much as the remaster, is simply the level design. The gliding mechanic that they gave Spyro is not something we've never seen before. In fact, Knuckles, the Echidna, and Sonic games functions pretty similarly. It's just this mechanic is utilized so well in creating levels that end up sending you back over areas in order to get to higher levels thanks to the gliding. For instance, you may run across in a certain direction, climb something, and then run back over to something you may have seen up above you prior but couldn't reach. You glide to it and you progress, and there's always a sense of, oh, here's a new thing. Whereas with a lot of collectathon type games, it often would feel like retreading certain areas constantly. I know that this is what turned me off of a lot of these types of games from this era, where Spyro, I think, worked pretty well. And it still works pretty well, but I'll say this, you get 3 games here, and none of them are particularly different from each other. The developer of the remakes, Toys for Bob, had a lot to work with. These games were originally made by Insomniac Games, and everything Insomniac Games does right, you can go back and find in the Spyro games. In fact, if you particularly like Spider-Man, and I think a lot of us do, something that really might be interesting for you is to go back and play these games. Keeping in your mind the context that this team eventually made Spider-Man, you can kind of find little things that are the seeds of ideas that we're still seeing in games today, like Sunset Overdrive and Spider-Man. And I think it's particularly evident in their level design. That's easily what I would praise most in the Spyro games. It's an early, attempt at basically open world gameplay, and it gets it more right than a lot of recent attempts at open world gameplay. If anything, these 3 games excel at that one specific thing. They give you basically a collection of hub worlds and levels, but it feels a lot like an open world without ever feeling like there's too much to do or there's no direction or anything like that. It's just dynamic level design that understands there should be an actual goal as you're doing things, and if you orient the gameplay around that, the game tends to be more fun. Now, if you just plow through these games, you may end up getting a little impatient, because they're not really games that are designed to, introduce a ton of new stuff as you play. Most of the mechanics are available in the first game that you will be using for all 3 of these games. That being said, when they tried to add mechanics to Spyro later in the reboot series, it was I definitely prefer the gameplay of these games, and it's nice to go back to it without having to, have an awful camera system and with gorgeous visuals. And while I do think that the gliding mechanic and the level design's utilization of it is basically the reason you should play Spyro, it's not without its flaws. There are areas where you will get lost and you have no idea what the hell you're doing or why you're still playing the area, because it feels like you've explored every corner of it, but oops, hey, there's something behind that tree, or there's some bushes that blocked the view of that door. But let's just go ahead and say that's pretty much the worst part about the game, and that's fairly minor. As the series progresses, the bosses get a lot better, particularly you start seeing more mini games, little additional things, and it's all pretty worthwhile, because honestly, it's just fun to play the game. It's fun to enter into a new area, glide around, try to find out what you're supposed to do, try to find what you're looking for, and all of that. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you'll definitely like this game if you don't like collectathons, but if you don't outright just hate the idea of collecting items, or you're even just open to seeing a version of that is actually really, really streamlined and fun, and also understand that Insomniac Games are master designers and that all of their concepts still hold up today pretty damn well, then this is worth it. It's $40. It's not even a full price game. You get 3 games and they're all fun. They are all a lot of fun. Not particularly complex fun, and for some people that may turn them off, but not me. I'm personally just fine with a platformer that does what it sets out to do quite well. Are you with me on that? Have you played Spyro? Or are you going to play Spyro? Leave us a comment, let us know what you think, and if you like this video, please click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week, so click that subscribe button, and do not forget to click that notification bell. As always, thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at FalconTheHero, and we'll see you next time right here on Game Ranks.